Your worship, Lord, we ask your guidance in our deliberations so that the decisions we take enrich the lives of the communities we serve and enhance the environment we administer. Amen.
Thanks, Gary. Well, welcome to the meeting. I hope the December meeting is as easy as this one looks like it's going to be, so that at least the formal part of it. Look, as I say, warm welcome, and just a reminder, it's being live streamed. So the first item on the agenda, we have apologies, and I have one from Hazel due to ill health. So I can move and second it. There's no one else, everyone's here. So moved Claire, seconded Lou. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. Item 2, any disclosures of members' interest? None today. That's fine. Thank you. Late items. There are none. And the confirmation of the order of the meeting. Mover and seconder. It's hard to change this one round. Moved Andrew, seconded Phil. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Okay, so councillor update on any meetings that they attended during the month, or anything they want to bring to the council attention. Ellen? On the side, the problem might not be switched on, Ellen. Push the button again. There we go.
There it goes. Yep. John Rowland Centre, which was good to see the new residences being sworn in, although it had been done in retrospect, but it was good. Great.
Yeah.
I think we had about 50 odd people there and a big turnout. Beautiful setting. Yeah, really lovely. Thank you.
That's good. So that was just, and everyone's aware of it, but because of we had about 3 or 4 cancelled citizenship ceremonies, so we felt that we'd just like to welcome them in. It wasn't a formal swearing in. That wasn't appropriate. So you agree, Ellen, it went really well. So we might have to have another one of those before we get back into the swing of things next March. Andrew, do you think? No, Phil?
Yeah, thank you. We had our 20th birthday at the Cambridge Information Centre this month, so that was a big success. Went to Chamber of Commerce event at the Hidden Lakes, and also was invited to the naming of the cycling team for the Olympics next year at the Velodrome. So that was a great event. There was about 12 athletes made up of 4 teams, and it was a really cool event. And also went to the citizen ceremony a couple of weeks ago. That was an awesome event, like Ellen said. So, yep.
Thank you. Thanks, Phil.
The virtual flying of the Keep New Zealand Beautiful.
Oh yeah, and we had, of course, we had the naming of the winning of the most beautiful street, which was really awesome. So although we missed out in the most beautiful town, winning the most beautiful street was really awesome, and it was a real community event. And next week, actually, we're putting on a morning tea for the Parks and Reserve team and Tree Trust and Cambridge Community Gardens and a couple of others, just to say thank you on behalf of Destination Cambridge, but also the Cambridge community. What an awesome job they do. You know, the Parks and Reserve team particularly, you know, it's not just a job to them. They take a lot of pride in making the town look amazing, and everyone's really grateful for that. So we're doing that next Wednesday.
Yeah, oh, great, Phil. They've got to share those awards around, I think, sometimes. So, okay, you got it the year before for the most beautiful town, so it's brilliant.
Pretty obvious that with all the categories, they were trying to spread it around to, but hey, we're not worried about that at all. No. We won most beautiful street, and we're really proud of that.
Yeah.
So,
great, thanks for that, Roger.
Yes, well, I also went to that. Yeah. It was well identified. Philip was obviously PR officer for the Wainwright district. He spoke well about that. That's really good. And it also went to the 20 additional members of the board there.
Yeah, thanks. Marcus, no, Mike, anything? You're right. Lou?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, I attended the Te Awamutu College 100 years commemoration for you and spoke at that, and that was very, very interesting. It's quite paramount that we recognise that we've had 100 years of secondary education in Te Awamutu, and the link between the Waipa District Council and the college is quite an integral one, so very, very important. Also attended last Saturday the dedication with John Robson from Waitomo of Albert Rainbow, where we put up his commemoration and created that, so it was great. So although I didn't speak there from Waipa because it was out of our area, it was still there. So thank you.
Thanks, Lou.
Thanks, Jim. Oh, just a couple of little things. So Goodex Reserve, so we've continued to have meetings with neighbours up there, and I think it's going well. Sally's leading the charge, so I think we're close to a plan to put in place, so she'll share that with you. Attended the Hamilton Airport annual general meeting as well, which was on behalf of Jim. And Ngāpai Whenua, I just thought I'd mention we're having regular meetings at the moment as well regarding the Ngāpai Whenua committee that we've got in place. The Lions have just generously given us, the council, $25,000 for I guess, seating and shelter around the Cambridge Skate Park. So, you know, they're just so generous and ongoingly so generous. And, you know, I just take my head off to the Cambridge Lions. They're just incredible. So that was received just late last week. And just make mention of the Waipa Recovery Fund. This is, of course, the fund that we've created and met last week to disperse the funds. So that information, I guess, will come out at some stage. Thanks.
Yeah, Claire.
Yeah, so New Zealand NZTA are doing a consultation on State Highway 39 and like the safety and speed limit review. And I attended the public drop-in day that was held in Pirongia Memorial Hall, and it was pretty well attended actually. There's a lot of residents that have been wanting the speed limit on that State Highway 39 through the village reduced for some time, and I think they're hoping that this might help achieve that. But they didn't really have a good, like a clear timeline on the outcomes, you like when they might finalise things or anything.
Could I just ask you on that, Claire, was it the similar sort of feeling for the going down to 80 kilometres an hour for the full length of the road in the rural area rather than just the urban section?
Yeah, I know that that's what they're looking at, but I don't think that's the feedback they're getting at. I think people, there were specific parts of that route that people would like improved, but none of the people that I heard from, and since then either, are looking forward to an overall blanket reduction. Yeah, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what happens. And I also attended MEIT's AGM, and I was really impressed with the results that they are now starting to show with their reintroduced species and how well they're doing. Yeah, it was a great AGM, and I think they had a lot of good news to celebrate. And yeah, it's pretty exciting, really. As I think, you know, as they're coming out of COVID, and they seem to be really gearing up for even more good work. So that was a really good meeting. Pirongia School held a I Love Reading Day, and I went there on behalf of Jim, and wow, what a well-organised event. And yeah, the kids just loved it. Most of them were dressed up as characters and from books and things like that. And I think the school does a fantastic job of encouraging children to do with reading and using role models, from the wider community to get that message across. So it was great. I also attended the citizenship welcome, which has been covered. But the highlight of the whole month has to be the launch of the Volcanic History of Mount Pirongia book at the Heritage and Information Centre at Pirongia last Thursday. I mean, did you realise that this is the only ankaramite volcano in the world that is on land? every other one of them is under the sea, actually to the north east of New Zealand. Yeah, and it's the work of a doctoral student from Waikato University, Oliver McLeod, and he's just done an incredible job of mapping out the volcanic history of the mountain and how significant it is. And he did, I talked to him afterwards, and he said that it was only made possible to get this book published through the Geoscience Association of New Zealand because Waipa District Council had supported him with 2 grants, one from the Pirongi Award Committee and the other from the Tuamutu Community Board, because he said it had been difficult to persuade the Geoscience Association to publish the book, but because he had that funding from his community, they went ahead with it. So they weren't particularly large grants, but he said it really made a difference. So I was really proud that Waipa was able to help with that.
Another bit of interesting history for the district. Yeah.
You should wish, I hope we're not underwater if that's the case in years to come. Most of us won't be here. I attended 2 meetings. One was the ComSafe monthly meeting. Just a few interesting figures. They've had a full roster in October. Was the first time since returning to level 1. Patroller hours worked just in October was 1,634. So that's pretty phenomenal. And in the total so far for the year, with 2 months to go, the patrols have been out there for 16,057 hours. So that adds up to a bit. They're still working on the cameras. They in October did 125 voluntary hours. Still limited by the hours, they're limiting the hours they can safely operate the cameras due to the number of operators. I think they do it in 2-hour shifts because looking at the camera and trying to stay sane, I suppose. It doesn't drive you to drink, but it pushes their limits. I mentioned last month there was Operation Pokonoa with the New Zealand Police, community patrols and the neighbourhood support. Feedback from that has been positive and in the patrollers' eyes, eye-opening and inspiring. So just to be out there and see how the whole operation works is fantastic. So it's all good. It's amazing what a change of personnel and the hierarchy and all through has. We've had a few people leave and come and go, but it's just so good as to what it was. Yeah, so that's a good positive. Also attended the monthly meeting of Pirongia Community Association where Dave Signs, our Civil Defence Emergency Manager, spoke. He's been to council before, but the way he put it through to how emergencies coordinated, I think not that we need to hear it here, but I thought it was fantastic for the people out there. He did it really well. There was a little bit of a feedback about the 1080 poisoning, which Claire's most really copped a bit of flack about. A certain gentleman got up and said there's been lack of consultation, so and Claire copped it, but luckily she wasn't there. So no, it was a good meeting, 2 good meetings really. Thank you.
Bruce.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Just a couple of quick things. I led a commemoration for Luke Inwa on the 1st of November at the plinth. Went down really well. Unfortunately, we had advice from the French embassy advising our French citizens not to speak at the commemoration, and in fact they asked them not to attend, but they did come along. They felt really passionate about coming along and joining in, which was good. And Liz was able to talk to the local police, and they were there just to make sure that everything, just because of the incidents in France just a couple of days beforehand, so just precautionary. The other disappointing thing is just from our land transport meeting, the government policy statement came out soon after the election, and one of the things that I raised was the $50 million reduction in the local roads funding that seems to have got onto rail. And, made the point about as an export nation, we need to have good highways, good local roads for getting our exports out. And the committee agreed with that. Those of you who know that I've been fighting for 18 months to get some speed limit signs where my 5 grandchildren go on State Highway 32 will have seen 3 more schools coming out of the woodwork in the local paper who can't get speed reductions or having trouble getting speed reductions. And after, I think it's nearly 2 years of, we went down to Wellington, and the minister at that stage, Julianne Genter, promised us that my suggestion about making those things easier to happen, she was looking forward to that and going to act, but we're still no further ahead. And from my point of view, down at my school where my grandkids go, we've offered to pay the $40,000 for the signs, and even the regional council chairman at our meeting said he'd kick in $5,000. But we're desperately hoping that happens. I believe that the local bodies have acted very, very quickly and responsibly. It's all very well to act quickly for the town, but when you have schools on main 100k roads, they need to be actioned as well for the safety of our kids. And the focus is on safer journeys. And to me, the safer journey includes kids going to and from school. Yeah, thanks, Your Worship.
Thanks, Graham. It's just mind blowing that putting up some speed restriction signs costs $40,000 too, isn't it?
I think the disappointing thing for me is that I've discovered that this decision's been made from people, by people, probably in Wellington, that actually haven't been to the site and seeing what the issue is. So they're coming out with suggestions about what could happen, like closing one of the entrances. Well, the school's only got one entrance. If you went and had a look and got an appreciation of what's there, you'd be able to act quicker, I would have thought. Anyhow, I've got an appointment.
Yeah. Okay, so look, from me, I've just the usual events, but armistice events, again, Lou, thanks very much to the Te Amutu RSA and Cambridge as well, two great events commemorating the end of the First World War. So they're important events, I think, from a civic perspective every year. So it's great to have those events going. And just nothing to do with the armistice particularly, but anecdotally, and it was at the citizenship welcome the other day, the guy that was installing or operating the sound systems was just passed on to me anecdotally that the fund, that the increase in money that we put out for events funding is really having a positive impact. He said he's getting continual comments from event organisers saying that the events wouldn't be going if it wasn't for that council funding. So that was really heartening to hear that we're actually getting the money to the right place. So look, really pleased the way that's shaping up. More importantly, I suppose I attended the two-day rural and provincial meeting in Wellington last week. And as you can imagine, a lot of discussion about the Three Waters reforms. Everybody has taken the initial funding. There's a great deal of unease out there, I would suggest, in terms of the next steps and the speed in which is being suggested by central government. And I think probably just reading the tea leaves around the room, most councils believe that it's already a done deal. And although the central government commentary is that it's an opt-in situation, that the belief is that it won't be opt-in for long. So there's certainly unease around the table, particularly from rural and provincial councils. And I've maintained our stance, obviously, that we want to see what's best for the ratepayers, and until we get to the next stage, we're not going to know that information. So I think we still need to be around the table, but finding out just what the cost implications are for our ratepayers before we actually make a call on it. There'll be quite a lot. There's a 2-day strategic planning workshop for the National Council that's in 10 days' time, beginning of December, down in Wellington. And I would imagine that there'd be quite a lot more discussion on the Three Waters, and flowing on from that, just what the purpose is for local government in the future, if and when, or if/when the Three Waters are no longer a council responsibility, what will be the purpose of local government, and what opportunities there are, and in fact whether local government wants to pick them up, and certainly at the moment, without the funding coming with them, I wouldn't suggest that a number of those functions should be funded via rates. They should be a tax, income tax funding. But when you start talking housing, health, social welfare, they're not usual functions for local government in New Zealand, but they are internationally some of the functions that the local bodies actually operate. So there's quite a lot of discussion to come on that. A lot of discussion, and I suppose on getting good data to actually make decisions, economic, housing statistics, those sorts of things. So there were a couple of presentations, and when I get them, I can circulate them to everyone. And again, there was quite a lot of discussion, and one workshop was on managing inappropriate behaviour around the council table, I should say. And I don't know whether it's a sign of the times and the stresses that people are under right through the country, but I was just surprised at the number of people that are actually, or councils that are actually having trouble with managing the relationships around the council table. And I suppose with us, we've all got to have a code of conduct, and we'll be discussing that a bit later. But yeah, it certainly surprised me how many people were struggling with it. And when you look in the media just recently, it just seems to be just about every day there's another council that's having major disruption around the table. And it's a real impediment to actually moving forward for those councils. So getting on top of it, I think, early is really key. But I don't know, Gary wasn't there, unfortunately, but normally there's been sort of, you say, one or two examples around the country, maybe in an election cycle, but it just seems to be a lot more frequent. And whether it's, everyone's talking about fairly high rate increases and the pressures of actually funding the three waters. So whether that's actually just getting to people or not, I don't know, but it is something that we obviously need to work on to ensure that it doesn't get out of hand. And just lastly, there was also a paper on roadworks, health and safety, and concerns about the people basically ignoring speed restrictions and warning signs around roadworks. And the industry is basically saying, look, we've got to get on top of this, particularly on the back of those 3 fatalities at Matata, probably 18 months, 2 years ago now. But there is a real concern that people just ignore those speed restriction signs going through roadworks, and it's really quite hazardous for people. So I think we could probably expect to see more enforcement in that area. But that's about it for me. But I think the 2-day workshop next week will be interesting to see what direction the National Council is looking to take, particularly on the 3 waters reform and what other functions that we're likely to be picking up or would want to pick up. So yeah, okay, so moving on. Item 6, confirmation of the minutes of the 27th of October. And if I just quickly, mover and seconder to receive them first, Claire and Roger. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. So just going through those quickly, page 1, any comments? 2, 3, 4, 5, nothing on 6, 7, and 8. So everyone's happy they're true and correct record of the meeting. So moved Lou Brown and seconded Claire. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Item 7, those documents signed under council seal. Gary, they're just warrants by the looks.
Yes, nothing further to comment on there, Your Worship, just warrants for environmental health enforcement and a graduate planner, which is under the resource management.
Moved Councillor Webber, seconded Councillor Thomas. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. And item 8, elected member code of conduct. Joe, did you want to say that?
No, other than to say, Your Worship, in my 12 years as CE, we've never used the code of conduct. It's something we have and hopefully we'll never use and resolve issues that we might have just by discussion. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. So the purpose of this report is to adopt a revised code of conduct. Each triennium, it's best practice for all councils to revisit their code of conduct with the new council that's come in. Apologies that this is so late in getting to you. Kind of COVID meant that I had different priorities this year, so only just kind of picking this up again now. We have got quite a few changes to the code of conduct this time. This is really just to align it to the LGNZ template. They reissue their templates every triennium, so we've moved as closely as we can to that, with retaining some of our WIPA specific provisions around, some detail around things like approving media releases on behalf of council, because it was still quite useful to include some of those WIPA specifics in there. So in case of just complaints, just to revisit that, they'll either be initially dealt with by the mayor, or if they're dealt with about the mayor, then they go to an independent investigator. The mayor can also decide if it's a member that who would like it to go out to an independent investigator anyway. So the independent investigator reviews it, investigates what's going on, and then a report will go to the body that's been set up to make a decision. In the report that you've got, proposing setting up a code of conduct committee, I did propose, what I am proposing is that we change the name of this body to the Code of Conduct Advisory Group. That's just to make sure we reflect the more informal nature, that the intention behind this committee and how it will operate. So the role of that group will be to effectively make a decision on the report that comes before them. Then they will put those recommendations to council. They will be purpose of that will be a binding recommendation that comes through to council. So effectively the matter won't be litigated twice. And so we've just proposed an amendment to the recommendations to just reflect that as well. So we have I've got the proposed changes to the recommendation up there. So if you just want to scroll through, Karen, so the first one is to replace in your Code of Conduct, where it says Code of Conduct Committee, with the Code of Conduct Advisory Group throughout the document in the code. And then if we just go down, that's establishing a Code of Conduct Advisory Group, with the purpose of considering the complaints. So if we just keep scrolling, Kieran. And the process for how that happens, then down to the membership. We just stop there, Kieran. So the membership is proposed that it's either the mayor, the deputy mayor, and just for consideration as to whether we have another alternate should for some reason the mayor and or the deputy mayor not be able to sit. So that just is another kind of safety measure. And then we've got some potential for 2 independents that will sit on that group as well. So it will be a senior independent legal advisor that will be appointed by effectively whoever is chairing that group. And then the potential for an additional external appointment if that's felt necessary at the time, depending on what the issue is. So we've gone to having more external involvement in that group with the new approach in the code. So then if we just keep scrolling down, and there's just a new D, and that's just for clarification, just to be clear that when those recommendations come through from the group, that they will be, intention of that is that they are binding recommendations. That's actually in the code at the moment, but just for clarity, we're just bringing that through and proposing to bring that through into the recommendations. So really, I think what I've included in your report is a commentary on a summary of the changes from the last time. So they're all there for you to see what's been amended, what's the particular YPAR provisions that we've retained, and anything that's different from the LGNZ template. So is there any questions?
Claire.
Thanks, Joe. You've done a great job. It's difficult. Yeah. There's a bit of a mismatch between the flowchart and what the detail is given on page 39 of our agenda, which is page 13 of your report.
Oh, okay. With
the flowchart says that the mayor can refer directly to the that group that gets set up. But what you've got in the detail is that the mayor considers it, and if more actions to be taken, it gets referred back to the CEO, and the CEO then sets it up.
Yeah, but I think because this diagram has just come out of the LGNZ template guide, and I think what they've probably done with there is probably summarised up the steps a bit, so it probably hasn't got every single step, and I just included that flowchart in there just as an easy kind of reference guide, and I think that's the purpose of how they put it in the guide, but not necessarily having every kind of necessarily single step. So it's the code that you're adopting, and the diagram in the report is just kind of an easy.
Well, the diagram's in the. I thought it was in the code of conduct too. That's all. But no, it isn't. No, it isn't. No. Okay.
No.
All right. That's
no.
all right.
I thought it might be useful to pull that out of the guide and put that in your report, just because it is quite a change to the process, and I just thought that visually that was quite a good way of just showing how it all stepped out. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they act like a kind of a conduit throughout the whole process in terms of making, every kind of step, it all kind of comes back through and then back out. So
I think just a comment. Some of the discussion, I was going to say a significant amount of the discussion from last week was really the code of conducts are toothless documents, and could there be a change in the legislation to put more power into the sanctions, I suppose, that you can impose through the code of conduct? And they were looking for a hanging provision, I think, some of the council. But I think Bill Harris's comments the other day was the really important issue is how you actually mend those rifts around the council table, not looking to sack people or stand them down for periods of time or anything like that. You've actually got to get some middle ground and work together on it. So yeah, whether having sanctions is an important change to the code, I'm not sure really. It's over to the integrity of the people around the table, in my view. And yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. And as I say, taking people off chairs of committees or making them stand out of the council meetings and things really doesn't resolve the problem. It just probably causes more tension. But yeah, we'll see whether there are any changes coming. But at the moment, yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with what you've come up with, Joe. So hopefully we never need it, as Gary said. So with it, any other comments or any concerns anyone has? All right. Okay, can we have a mover and seconder then? Yeah, Phil and Marcus. All those in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. And resolution to exclude the public. Mover and seconder, Claire and Marcus. All those in favour?